All right, so this is actually, this image is my great niece playing on the floor at my sister's house. And I always joke with my sister that she's like beige on beige on beige. We're very opposite in that way, but I loved I loved her posture, and I love all the playful colors of the toy, so I thought it would be a really fun demo on how to use these crazy pan pastels for the underpainting. So what I did here, I just did a little gridding, and I gently and lightly with a very pale pink pastel pencil did a contour drawing, a little bit of shading, and I'm going to just start laying in some general colors. This is a nice thing. I don't usually use this on something this small, but I'll just show you how it kind of really smoothly lays out the color. It's really great if you work large, obviously, or for skies and water or stuff like that. So I'm just going to get a basic shape. The beginning of my paintings are all about large shapes. No matter what the medium, no matter what underpainting technique I use, I'm looking at shapes and forgetting about the detail. So that's about enough of using that big sponge. I'm going to switch to one of the little soft tools, which are just wonderful. It's like painting with pastels. It's just so fun. Again, I'm not concerned about, wrinkles or folds. I'm just getting the overall general shape of her little leotard. Okay, so I'm just lifting up the pan pastel on the edge of this. Looks like a plastic palette knife. This is one of the shapes I like using. And I think I might get a little bit of the darker color, just kind of indicating where that shadow. And again, I'm working darker, as you all know, pastels, you work from dark to light. So I'm not worried about getting too dark. Darker is an advantage versus too pale. And then I just kind of swish off, just take a paper towel and I just, kind of wipe it off like you would a brush. Get off that color. And I'm going to get a little piece of her hair, little shape of her hair. Again, I'm not going to worry about the highlight on the hair. I'll get that in later with the soft pastels. And it's just going to look like a big jigsaw puzzle that you would make for a little child. So no little pieces, just big pieces. And this is just what I, normally would do with my pastels with an alcohol wash or a watercolor underpainting, which I love to do. So this is still relatively new for me. It's just discovering more ways to use this fun medium. I am going to indicate a little bit where that blue ribbon is. All right. A big shape coming down on her neck, part of her hair. All right, and then I'm going to switch to a lighter tool. I mean, not a lighter tool, a cleaner tool. I usually have one for my lights and one for my darks sitting here. And I'm going to get the shape of her skin, the light on her skin here. It's a beautiful shape, just like that. And all my grid lines just get absorbed into the painting. I don't always use grids, but this is a small painting of a lot of stuff, so I want to make sure I can get it all where it needs to be. And now I'm going to get a color like this kind of ochre color which is going to be dark, but I want to get a base color for the shadow. Again, just imagine that you're making a puzzle for a little kid. It's not going to have detail, it's just going to have a big shape. And I'm using a little flesh tone on top of that, like a pink flesh tone. Just again, the shape of her little face and into her neck. And these tools are wonderful for softening edges. They're just really fun. So here's the shadowy side of her arm. Again, it's got that ochre with some pink mixed into it. And what usually happens when I do an underpainting of any type, I will lose some of the drawing, so I'm not worried about it. I'll come back after I get this all laid in and tone up my drawing with some pastel pencils. I'm going to come back a little bit, and when I work this small, I do use these little spongy things. Like obviously I wouldn't be using it on a big piece, but be like a small brush, more or less. All right, let's get the rest of her arm. We got that back arm over here, which is more pinkish than the one up here. So I'm going to use more pink and less of that ochre color. And the pastel mat really is smooth enough to really let this stuff glide right on. Okay, now I'm going to get her little leggings, her little tights. And that I'm going to use like a gray, soft gray, again mixed with some pink. I'm going to kind of divide this shape into two parts. The shadow, it's very subtle. It's not a deep, dark shadow. All right, so we got the bottom part of her leg there. And there's this nice kind of cast shadow coming off of her leg from the leotard onto her tights. And then I'm going to use a lighter color. I have a lighter, like a blue mixed with pink for the top part of her tights. It's just a real fun, like kind of freeing, like I do oil painting too, so this feels like I can just be painting. All right, let's get some background in. I modified this. I think I posted the actual photo where there's just a staircase behind her, and it's pretty drab as far as color goes. So I'm going to make it a nice gray mixed with some blue to pull out the blue in her little outfit, and warm it up a touch too with that ochre color. Again, I'm making it, I don't care if I get too dark because I will lighten it as I need to with the soft pastels. The hard pastels don't really seem to want to work with this. It's really this and the soft pastels and some pencil. And you can experiment and try all these the tools, and you could just play around with it. Get right around her hair. I am going to take this kind of gold color and just stick it in up here where the light is hitting her little ponytail, a little bit up here. All right. And I'm going to just hit it right up, touching her hair. Let's get some more of that gray in there. Just want the background. I want it to be somewhat colorful, but I don't want it, you want to keep it neutral. So all the colors of the toys and her little outfit will really pop. And back over here next to the, I guess it's Barbie's dream house or castle or whatever. And I grew up with these toys, but I raised two boys, so I never had all this, Barbie stuff. But it is fun to paint. So right up next to the little structure here, it just kind of creates a life of its own. The way the powder falls on there, it's kind of pretty. And there is another product down here that is called the blending colorless blender, and that will really, if you want to get really smooth with no color edges, no break of edges, you can rub it over. It's just like a white powder, it looks like, and you can soften everything. All right, let's see, what else do we need to fill in here? I'm going to go back to my lighter little palette thing and get some of the ground, the floor. A little bit of light coming in. And these little spongy things, you can wash them with soap and water and let them dry, so you can reuse them. I don't know for how long. I haven't had these that long, but so far it's not a problem. Got a little blobby thing there, but no worries. And then the foreground is going to have a little more warmth to it. Darker and warmer. Again, my goal here is, like still keeping my idea of big shapes, and I want to get the whole thing covered with a layer of the pan pastels, and then I will go into refining it with the soft pastels. And there's a nice shadow. I'm going to accentuate that a little more than it is in the photo, like a cast shadow under her leg. And there's darks under her little outfit. All right, I'm washing this off. I'm just going to use this light blue for this stuff, the light coming in on the carpeting. Again, I just see almost like a square, and then I see shapes here. Let's have some fun with the toys. I'm going to take that blue that I first used, the light blue and a dark blue mixed, and kind of play around with this funny thing back here. I'm going to take this magenta color. I think one of the things that'll help me is just to kind of indicate these little red things, so I can kind of keep a handle on the drawing where everything's going to go. All right. No matter how fast I work, I always want to work faster. I'm just impatient. Again, I know this is going to be lightened up when I come in with my pastels, my soft pastels. And let's get some nice pink stuff going. I'm going to use this very strong color first with this pink over it. Well, maybe we just need the pink back here. I'm not going to try and get every detail on the toy with the underpainting. But here I can see that roof, and whatever they call it, that edge there. And this comes down here. And I'm taking this other part here, I'm going to pull it out more because I want to have it more in the painting, because if I ended up framing this, it would just slice it in a very awkward place. So I'm going to kind of make that other Barbie thing come out a little more. I think it makes a little better composition. Nice soft edges all the way around with this stuff. It's just dreamy to paint with. A little bit of flaking coming down. It doesn't powder, it doesn't crumble. I mean, there's not as much dust as there is with the soft pastels. It kind of really grabs. Just getting that little arch in there. Let's get some of the green toy. So this is going to be the blue and this is going to be the green. Lots of chromatic colors back there, which would be fun. That's why I'm keeping everything around it on the more neutral. I'll take my little tool for some of this little stuff in here. It's little, but I'm still not getting detail. I want to keep emphasizing that. I'm still looking at like the overall shape of everything. This little funny thing, it's kind of blending into that background, but that's okay because I'll just make that a little lighter. Again, I could have had more. I didn't take like every single pan pastel color. I'm simplifying my palette with the pan pastels a lot, just in case you are trying to do this at home, or you don't have to have every color in the book. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of redrawing to do here, but I'm used to that. It doesn't bother me. And there's this cute little yellow toy here. We're almost there. We're getting there. Getting there. And I got the little sun guy here. I love that thing right here. Again, I'm just getting the general color of it, not not all the lights and darks, just an overall local color, we call it, the local color of each thing. All right, let's get some of this right in here. I'm going to really have to do some redraw, but that won't take me long. So there's this here. Again, I'm looking at, there's a, if I want to see the distance between her and the toy, I'm not looking at those two things, but I'm looking at the negative shape, that little piece of like triangle. That's what I'm looking at. So like right next to her little outfit right here. I'll redraw that and show it to you more clearly when I get this done, this part done. Okay, let's see, we get this little funny little door here. This toy. She's holding a little, I don't know, little toy, little things. It's been a long time since I've had little kids around with all these toys. All right, we're almost there. Almost there. Let's get a little more carved out here. There we go. And like some foreground color. So here you go. This is how I would approach an underpainting with the pans. Again, like I said, if you're doing like a bigger, like a seascape or, you know, where it's big, you can use all kinds of these sponges just to really get it all on. And that's fun. I think I got it mostly filled in here. Let's get a little bit more of the spaces in between the objects, a little more full of the pan. So down in here again, looking at the negative shape, I kind of draw it out around the toys. And this just is going to give me a good base to work on. Maybe a little bit more up in here, a little bit darker. Okay, I am going to pick up a pastel pencil here and actually kind of tone up my drawing a little bit and then hit it with the soft pastels. All right, I'm going to pick up, use a darker, like a brown, so you can see it. You'll be able to see it better. I'm going to indicate where I'm going to put her ear. And this is, you know, what I always do before I really start layering color. I got the little side view of her face. A little break in here. Again, I'm looking at this shape now. That's going to help me with the proportion of her neck, her head. The neck comes down, comes way down here, and then her shoulder. It's got a nice, pretty long neck. And I can see that back here it's going to have to come in a ways. I know people like to kind of rush to put the color on, but I'm a real stickler for drawing. I am all about the drawing. So we have this shoulder, this arm. I'm not so worried so much about every little piece of the toy, because I will be finishing that off camera. I just wanted to show you mostly her and right around her. Again, if I want to see the distance between her leg and her arm, I don't look at the leg and the arm, but I'm going to look at the shape in between, the negative shape. The arm is coming down here, and there's her thigh coming up here. This arm is coming, reaching down. The palm of her hand is in shadow. And all the little toy people are in there. Then I want to just get the shape of her leg worked out a little more, and then I'm going to start with the layering. All right, and there's that lovely, I love that cast shadow. I just think it's pretty right there. Kind of breaks up the big shapes here. It really takes me back to my childhood with all the ballet classes and toys. Ballet classes and Barbie. All right, I'm going to move my pan pastels aside and bring out my pre-selected palette of pastels. It's a mixture of different brands of soft pastels. They end up in pieces like this, so I can't even always tell. Now I'll start layering. Again, I'm not going to go for my lightest light first. I put in here all the skin tones I'm using, so it's a layering process on top of the pan pastels, and I highly recommend you have a little test pad next to you always, so you can try the colors out on that before you apply them to the painting. And I'm not pressing hard, I'm just kind of doing a little like swipey thing, and it just flows right over the pan pastels just beautifully. It's going to be the dark in her hair. Again, if I want to, I sometimes will come back even with the little blending tools, and even with the soft pastels on there, and blend if I want to get it a more blended look. And I love the glowy light on top of her, you know, that from her skin from the window coming out. Kind of a coolish skin tone because it's getting like outdoor light on her. And I want to establish this beautiful juicy turquoise. And that's really going to start to give it some pizzazz. Again, these are all the colors I'm using in the little leotard. And you have to always think of whatever color you think you see. I suggest you go a couple values darker for the first layer on top of the pan pastels. There's kind of a play of purpley, bluish, really fun tones. And again, I am always going to be coming back and checking my drawing. I want to make sure, especially in her little neck, because it's just so graceful and sweet. And let's stick in some highlights so I can kind of see where it's going with the hair. Yes, the highlights are also a combination of kind of warm and cool colors. A little golden and a little cooler light coming again because the light's coming from outside. And I will also pick up some pastel pencils. I know you can use colored pencils. I don't have any, so I use my pastel pencils to kind of glaze over the colors as well. And again, these little tools just, you can kind of tickle the edge and make it a little softer, blending them together for a nice transition. And I do use my fingers a bit. I don't like to overdo it with too much blending because I like the different colors coming through. If I do want to blend a little bit, I'll take a pencil lightly on there. Let's get some of these darker blues down here. You know, if you map it out with the underpainting, it should go pretty quick when you start applying the color. I can see here where it turns, it's like her scapula, her shoulder blade. It's kind of showing me where it's turning from here down to here. And I want to get this piece of light indicating the little bit of light on her arm next to the sleeve of the leotard. And then I'll come in with a pencil, pastel pencil, and accentuate that edge a bit. Let's get a little stronger. Is that the color I want? No, I think this will be good for down here. I mean, even after all the many, many, many years I've been doing pastels, I still, I still test it because every painting is kind of its own unique thing, and the colors are going to play different next to other colors. It's not always going to be the same. This color will look different next to this, then this color will look next to that. So it's still really important to check your values and your colors and comparing. The only thing I have in here is a piece of charcoal. Just regular old vine charcoal. It's a great blender and a great neutralizer. You don't lose all the colors underneath, but it softens them, kind of harmonizes them. And if I made that head too high up, no worries. I can come in right on top of it and lower it down a bit. All right, let's see what else here. We're going to keep working on this little tutu. No, it's not a tutu. It's just a leotard. I know the difference because I had both growing up. And there's some nice darks underneath here. And let's just have a little playful fun time now with some of the toys. Oh, I don't like that green. It's a warmer green. That little toy. This little great niece of mine is an only child, so she gets a lot of toys and a lot of attention. Let's work on her hand because it's pretty important part of this whole thing. But again, before I just start plopping down the color, I always like to make sure my drawing is correct. When you're doing a figurative thing. Landscapes, flowers, not as critical, but this has got to be correct or it will not look good. So you can do as much gridding as your skill level requires if you're trying to lay something out like this. I think I want to get a little stronger shadowy color on her arm, this arm. Yeah, on top of that greenish ochre color that I first laid down. That's looking better. And I want to get that back to that little cast shadow coming around her leg. And I will lose a lot of the edge, even though I'm coming in with some like kind of hard edges for the drawing, I will easily, disappear them. I will lose them as I need to. So we have a play of lost and found edges throughout the whole painting. And a little bit stronger. I'm going to get that transition up here from the shadow side of her neck over to the light side of her neck. And that's where I can pick up one of my little handy dandy tools again. And I want to get that background coming right up next to the light of her neck. There we go. Bring it in a little bit. And we can start to get, well, I want to get this a little stronger right next to her hair so that I can work in some of the loose strands of the hair, which you can't really see so much on here because I photoshopped around it, but there's pretty little golden strands of hair. And here I'm using a combination of like a mauve color and a bluish tone. I want to get up right next to her. And then I can take a little corner edge. This is kind of jumping the gun here, but I will start to get little pieces of the hair because it's fun. You must have fun. Fun is important. Okay, and there's a little bit so I can also use my pencils. Like I see a little bit of a golden brownish. Maybe I'll use this just really lightly because I see a little bit of that in there. Lots you can do going back and forth with the soft pastels and the pencils. A whole bunch of fun stuff happens. All right, let's get some more toys. So it might just be lots of dots of color, to kind of play around with the shapes of the toys and not so much every single detail of the toy. And here again is that funny little red top thing. And then it comes down, there's one here. These kind of just help me place everything, kind of little stepping stones. And then there's one in here, and then there's one right down here. And that kind of lines up with her hand as far as the height. So all these little techniques for keeping your drawing accurate. Let's get the little cute door. And okay, now we gotta have some fun back here. Fun with Barbie stuff. Fun with color back here. And there's this really strong, crazy pink. I actually bought myself a set of Diane Townsend fluorescents, which might be fun given this certain, I wouldn't use, I don't even know why I bought them. I just saw them and they were sitting there and they just jumped out into my hands. And it's not something I would have ever thought of myself using, but certainly with a fun thing like this, why not? Get this little roof thing up here. It's starting to look like a Barbie house, huh? Starting to. And there's this little car with the wheels back here. Let's get some fun things on. Jumping back over to this little sun guy. And then I want to get into the connecting the background behind the toys, so they don't look like they're pieced in there. They look more like they're settled in there. Again, you can get as detailed or not, in this part. I just think it's fun. I thought it would be a fun demo just because of all the fun, happy colors, and Lord knows we need happy. Just grateful that we have our art to keep us happy. Now I'm going to take a lighter color, and I was talking before about the negative shapes around the toys and carving out her shape. So I'm going back to that thinking of the shapes, the negative shapes. So right here next to this arch thing, whatever it is, I see this really strong, really nice shape in here. Again, I just imagine, I always love doing jigsaw puzzles, always have. And I just imagine that I am cutting out shapes for a jigsaw puzzle, because really that's what the drawing is. It's just shapes next to shapes that fit together to make the puzzle pieces fit. So that's what we're doing here. So no matter what you're drawing at all, it's just irrelevant, really. It's just shape next to shape. Yes, I know, easier said than done, but it takes a lot of practice. But if you start thinking in those terms, you will see a lot of improvement in your drawing skill. That I can guarantee. So it shouldn't matter what the subject, everything is a shape. There's these little funny figures. One that she's holding and one down below that are kind of fun little dots of color as well. Let's work right next to her hand, get this thing going better. Again, if you start to get confused, if it's something, this is kind of detail-y. If you're getting confused, pick up your pencil and stop yourself and look at the shape. I see so many times when my students they'll just start putting color because they're getting a little frustrated and stuff, and just have to stop yourself from doing that. Slow down, go back to the basics, and pull it together. Okay, there's all kinds of fun color down here. It's kind of a hot orangey kind of color going on. All right, let's get a little bit behind on what do I want to do next. I think I'm going to work over here a little bit. Again, dark to light. This is the last color I put on back here because it's the lightest light. It's not going to go first or second, it's going to go last. So whatever layers you're putting underneath, wanting to get to this color, you have to break it down to dark to light. So this is coming out here. Da, 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 da. I see the shape underneath this big toy. There's the sun, there's this, and then there's a bunch of light over here. And I want to get her leg. And it's like a cool, warm, funny little, wearing off-white tights on with the skin showing underneath, so it's got some warmth to it. And a little piece of light underneath her leg. No, it's too light. How about that? Nah, that's not light enough. Well, you know what? We're going to get that a little darker underneath. So always comparing, always comparing. So this is the shape of the leg and her calf muscle here. Sometimes if you just take your pencil and follow the form of the anatomy or whatever you're drawing, that helps give it some energy and some more form. And that's always fun. Let's get her foot. And we'll get that little bit of dark right underneath her leg here, and right where her ankle's touching. Okay. So when you get to a part like that, you have a choice. Do you want to make that lighter or that darker? And I think I don't want to get this too light, so I'm going to try and get that bottom of her thigh a bit darker. And that will make this look lighter. The color, it's the relativity of color, which is something I talk a lot about in my classes. What colors work next to what colors, and you can't paint a color without looking around the other neighbors. And then the other thing, when you have folds and wrinkles, like how many do you need to put in? Every single one? No. A few of them. I put in 1 or 2, then I see, does it need more? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Her little tummy kind of folding under there. It's kind of cute. A little bit of flaking, not too much. And let's see if we could get like a little bit more detail up in her face. That's too light. Let's get a little darker. And very soft edges around the hair to the skin. It's always a tricky part. Always, always. Very warm tone on the ear, catching some light. All right, we're going to wrap it up here pretty soon, and then I will go off camera and I will finish it up and post it. I guess they'll post it for you all to take a look. But I think I got a pretty good jump on it. Let's get a little bit around her hand here. I think I kind of ignored that. She is picking up one of the little figures. And the bottom underside of her hand is in shadow. Again, we're going to kind of do those lines following the form. I think that wrist is a little bit off, which is no big deal because I can come in, because I can work light on top of dark and carve out her arm a little more gracefully. It's going to need a little bit of work, but one little hit on the foreground. Let's get this shadow underneath, because I said I was going to kind of make that a little stronger than it appears in the photo. I'm going to put some brown and kind of jazz it up a little bit with some blue. It's not just blue, it's like iridescent almost. And then blend it down into the carpet. Yeah, I always tease my sister. We're so opposite with our color palette and what we want surrounding us. I need color, she needs not color. That's a little dark, but that's okay because I will come in, let's try this one, a little bit so I don't lose that feeling of that cast shadow. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit, but I don't want it to be as light as my background. So I want this to be lighter so it goes back, and this to be stronger and warmer so it comes forward. We didn't get a lot of Barbie stuff in, but I'll work on that. That's going to be fun. Yeah, it's sort of fun because, you know, normally these chromatic colors, you'd be like, ah, you're going to kill it. But I just like the play of, you know, the sparkle of all the fun toys. All right, folks, I think that's going to be it for this demo. It's hard to stop because it's just way too much fun. All right.